Okay, I will call the July 12th, 2022 meeting to order. Charlie will take roll call, and then Charlie will take over the meeting for the reorganization.
Chair Beecham.
Here.
Vice Chair Strouwen.
Here.
Board Member Funger. Here. Board Member Crawford.
Here.
And then Board Member Cadwallader is out.
So Tina has, I don't know if she's been exposed, but she's waiting for her results from a COVID test, so she will not be here. So I would entertain a motion to excuse her absence.
Motion. Seconded.
It's been moved and supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Charlie.
All right, so included in your packets a memo, section 16.1 of the city charter states that the board shall organize at its first meeting in July each year and shall elect one of its members chairman. So every year per charter in July, we are supposed to formally select a chair for that fiscal year. Currently, Perry sits in the chair position and Andrew sits in the vice chair position. I don't know if anybody wants to have any discussion, but at this time, I would entertain a motion to nominate our current slate for reappointment to their positions or accept other nominations that would be put forward for consideration.
And I will say that I would like to continue as chairman, so I'll say that out front, so.
I don't say any discussion, any comments.
But I'm not gonna nominate myself. Oh.
Yeah, I'm also happy to continue as vice chair. It's the same thing. I'm not going to do.
Well, I will make a motion to have Andrew as vice chair.
Do we want to do this in two separate motions, or do we want to do a single motion? If nobody's going to change, it may be easier for one of you to make a single motion to approve the continued positions, or we can do separate motions and separate action items for each position.
I'm okay with the current slate the way it is.
Yeah.
So, move and I'll support.
Yeah, I move that we have Barry continue to serve as chairman and Andrew to continue to serve as vice chair.
All right, so I got a motion from Daniel. Here, support from Craig. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Okay.
Chair, I'll hand it back over to you.
Approval of the agenda as presented. Any changes or anything that you?
Do you want to add a line check discussion to it?
Yes. So under action items C, we're going to have we'll back up. So Charlie and I met early this morning and talked about tonight's meeting and everything, and we decided that we would want to have a discussion on the line shack. The proposals are all in. I don't know if everybody, and we'll take the time to go through them today. And then our goal, because Charlie's going to be out of their city council is planning on having a meeting the 25th, and Charlie is on vacation. I'm going to be on vacation out in Colorado, and Ryan's not going to be here, and so we just thought we would have a discussion tonight, put it in a formal letter, and send that on to the council. So with that, number C, I would add an action item to discuss the line shack proposals.
I move to approve the agenda as presented with the action item C addition.
It's been moved. Support?
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved, supported. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Approval of the minutes, and I know I just,
I apologize, I don't know what I managed to do, but they were not included in the original packet. Updated copy was sent out just late this afternoon. Luckily, it was a relatively uneventful board meeting, but I do apologize for that.
so if you need a moment to go through that, by all means. And I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes of the June 9th, 2022 board meeting.
I'll motion to approve the minutes of June 9th.
Support?
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Public comment, any public comment? Besides employees and board members and one council member, that's all that we have here. So, hearing nothing, we'll move on to action items. And I'll let Charlie take over with the action items.
All right, now I'm going to hand this over to Julie to review our fiscal year 2022 write-offs for the fiscal year ending. These are write-offs for the fiscal year ending, or accounts that have been inactive since the end of fiscal year 2021. Julie?
Yeah, so as the memo states, we're hoping to write off $440.44 was last year, or no, this year, sorry, and just decreases a little bit from last year. Last year was rate above $699, so about $259.51 lower than last year. Yeah, so we just hope that you approve this write-off.
Only other thing I'll add is you guys did a great job. Again,
The trend, I like as well.
I know, and I warned the board last year, don't count on this trend every year.
I agree, don't count on it,
That's-
but the amazing job that the customer service department does is top notch.
Yeah, this is a product of teamwork, that's for sure. And I
Yes.
see it, Julie sees it closer than I do, but, this is a product of smart policies being adopted by the board, good risk management policies being adopted by the board, and teamwork from the office staff to diligently not allow collectible funds to go uncollected. So, that's all I really have for that one.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to, total write-off is $699.90.
$440.44.
Okay, oh, that was
That was
last
last
year's,
year, yeah.
I'm sorry, $440.44.
Yep,
And, would entertain a motion
So moved.
and support.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried.
no, I won't go over the next, there. Okay.
You ready to roll on?
Yep.
So we'll introduce a discussion on policy 3-9.1. This is in the all-employee handbook and came up over the last couple months, was brought to my attention, and basically, the policy states that employees are prohibited from accepting any gifts, discounts, or benefits from vendors and customers due to their employment with Lowell and Power. Just going to ask that the board consider a potential revision to this policy that would allow for small benefits with a limit, but ultimately the absolute nature of this policy makes it impractical. There's networking opportunities where somebody may want to buy a dinner or lunch, or vendors drop off hats or anything in, under the absolute nature of this current policy. That's, all those things are prohibited, and to me, it's overly prohibitive. and not really, it's not practical to be able to adhere to 100%. With that, I'd also state that there absolutely needs to have limits and boundaries on it, but there's an immaterial nature to small things that don't have impacts beyond the fact that it's a relationship that we have. Talking with some other companies and utilities and how they handle this, typically there is an immaterial or a materiality limit established. There's different ways of doing that. One of the things that I saw that I thought made sense was tying it to a 1099 and not being over because that establishes a 1 year time frame in up to that amount over the year. Anything that would necessitate a 1099 would ultimately be prohibited. But I just asked the board to consider a slight revision in this that allows for staff to, not have to worry about being breach of policy for small things or dinners and lunches or.
Is that the 1099 amount over a year, is that still $600?
$600.
Okay.
Yeah.
599.
Yeah, $50, and it equates to obviously $50 a month, and that seems to be a ballpark for what most places are. Some places I've talked to establish you can't do more than X number of dollars per incident or per occasion. And to me, we have protections, from purchasing policy. We have other policies in place that protect against the pitfalls of accepting gifts.
Well, hey, just think of how many, like, maybe pads of paper and pens you won't have to buy. Could be a money-saving venture.
Well, so, and Charlie and I have talked about it. So there's examples of conferences. You go to a conference and they've had, over the years, for spouses, there's been companies that would sponsor a day spa or something for the spouses, and or I know on some of the trips they had fishing out on Lake Michigan, those types of things. So I mean, technically, with anything in here, a lot of networking and things happen on those types of trips. I understand the concept of it. You don't want to be influenced by somebody's offering things, but again, I think it's appropriate if it's within certain amounts, because people, companies for the line, I mean, they drop off hats, they do different things, and so having it, what we have now is letter of the law. I mean, you can't accept, I mean, it doesn't happen, but you can't accept a pen, you can't, a hat, you can't.
I thought we had this discussion with Quake years back, and there's like this.
We might have.
Of de minimis, because I remember there's like, asking a question like, well, so you can't take a pencil or a pen, like, well, that de minimis always applies.
And that's where I like it.
It's things like that, his opinion I thought was like, things like that are safe. Now, if you're talking about meals and things, and now that probably should be.
Who defines what de minimis is? And that's why I personally think a policy that makes it clear, so there's no judgment, is just a cleaner way, because
Or it travel, right?
Yeah. And what's the other question, what's a vendor or a customer? Does MVPA classify as a vendor? Well, we invest, we pay them money, but they're not a traditional vendor, and we have more say in it. So there's just a lot of questionable areas in, quite frankly, it's in, for my position, it grants me too much authority, is mine. It is mine. It gives me
Too much discussion.
what gives me a scapegoat. You know, if somebody accepts anything, I shouldn't have that authority as general manager to terminate somebody, because in another section of the policy, it says grounds for termination is receiving prohibited benefits by the letter of the policy. It's just overly, it's just
Yeah.
more, in principle, it makes perfectly good sense. It's protection against less than above board actions. But in reality, it's overly restrictive and quite frankly, provides me more authority than I should have for grounds for termination. I don't think any board member wants to see an employee terminated over accepting a mug or getting a lunch paid for.
So the question another question I have is just, are there any like regulations less being a government entity? I know, so the company I work for, there's very strict limitations on what we can accept, especially when doing business with governments.
And I didn't run this specifically by our attorney, but the people that I talked to are other public utilities, and one was a school system, actually. So similar regulatory grounds as we would be faced with. And I think it goes back to, as long as it's an immaterial amount, and ultimately that 1099 level is kind of a government-approved threshold for what's material enough to catch their attention.
Okay, I know one we have is like, you know, for example, meals, you know, regular meals or something can be like reimbursable or things like that, but alcohol never, you know. And so there's some of those things, like even if it's small, never. But
Is that reimbursable, or you're not allowed to accept
both.
from somebody else? It's the same
It's just,
same
yeah,
rules, different.
I mean, we are kind of right cautious, right? We deal with, you know, hundreds of governments, and so it's like you never know what the laws are, right? And so they try to just avoid any potential conflict, but it's just that's why I want to make sure it's not just a, hey, as long as it's under $600, it's okay. It's like, well, I don't know what the law is regarding alcohol or those things, like, you know, you can do. I forget what the entertainment rule is, but there's certain things like nightclubs, no, but other, like a baseball game, maybe that's okay, you know? And I just don't want to, I don't want to worry that we allow something that shouldn't be. I don't know if there's a state law or federal law that I just don't know, but.
And that's why I'm looking for board feedback. If you'd like, we can, you know, I didn't propose any amendments in here, so.
Well, yeah, if we look at what the legal strictures are.
Yeah, I hate to see the line and appreciation thing go away, which is all donated by vendors and merchants who are customers, and that would be kind of sad to see that go away too.
I think that's one thing we do allow, is things like team building type things are okay for whatever it is.
Yeah, that might be something internally, but when it's a different outside organization doing it, maybe it might be different, I don't know.
So I mean, all of what I'm talking about comes from government funded,
Oh, gotcha.
right? So we can't accept gifts from the government except within very strict limits, and like under $25 if it's personal, or, you know, no alcohol, you know, just those kind of things, but there are exceptions, and I hope we don't need to go that detailed. I mean, you know, I work for a huge company, but,
You operate on a slightly different geographic scale.
but the part that got me worried is just the whole government part,
Yeah.
because we're technically a government agency, so.
A couple practicability questions. How are we going to value some things that come in as benefits, and how are we going to report those so we get a summation over a year? You know, like, you go get a dinner, you know, are you just gonna go $40, or if someone takes you on a trip, or they pay for your travel? Are we just gonna guess the cost? Are we gonna ask that person for the cost? How are we gonna report that? How is that gonna get summed up in the utility, so we have a running total? Do we do like, if it's under 25 or under 50, we don't, or under 40 or something, we don't concern about it. Once it gets higher than that, we gotta start running total.
I think in theory, that's, you know, you'd want to keep if the limit is a 1099, I can't think of any vendor that would even bump up to that limit. Or there would be, to me, there would be something that would say, that, I mean, I can't think of a single vendor, I mean, it's mostly, you know, lunches, it takes a
Yeah.
lot of lunches.
Yeah.
So I hadn't really, you know, we don't have a system, I guess, proposed. We could develop a system. I would be concerned, or at least cognizant of the labor that's
Yeah, I don't want
involved
to be
in.
overly cumbersome,
in
because that's what I'm
that,
saying, like, how do you, you know, what if it's quarterly and something in the last quarter kind of big happens and you go, oh no, that might push us, plus these 3 previous quarters, might push us somewhere near that limit. Now we have to go back and dig in and figure out how much those were, you know, I mean, if you have a policy, then it's fine with it.
Yeah,
So, you
yeah,
know,
we should.
you know, but I just wonder how that, like,
Well, and there's things that.
because I wouldn't want it to be cumbersome where you're
Yeah.
like, hey, I got a hat, I guess it's $7, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's-
record it, put it in a file somewhere, I do this
What
every.
kind of hat did you just get for $7?
Okay, when you're buying mass quantity hats.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and that's the problem, is there's a lot of logistical issues with just tracking anything.
Cause I almost wanna see the de minimis to get rid of like some amount below that. We don't track it because it's just, it'll never hit 600.
Yeah,
Some amount, some way to get to the 600-ish, if that's what we call limit, and then above that, it's gotta be like GM board approval. There's gotta be something where we really have to sit down and know that there's no conflicts of interest or
Yeah.
something like that.
I think we could, I mean, from a practicality standpoint, your meals, it's mostly meals and freebies outside of maybe around a golf or a fishing trip or, you know, something like that. So I can see, meals are tough, because if a vendor's taking me out, the last thing I want to ask our staff to do is say, hey, by the way, how much money did you spend on this? So in general, meals are probably going to fall into that de minimis. Or I couldn't think of any vendor that would supply enough meals to an individual over the course of a year that would cap that, get close to that $600 level, so.
Could we make up a schedule just based on some assumptions? A schedule of costs, like a hat is $7, you know, pen
How
is
is that?
35 cents.
That-
I mean, does that, I don't wanna see us over account, but yet, on the other hand, if we do, it's like, you know,
I think you could easily do anything under a certain dollar amount it doesn't need to be reported. Anything beyond that should be reported to me or your direct supervisor.
Cause it'll only be a few things.
And it would be very handful of things, and then it's more just we could keep a spreadsheet that just, it would have so little activity. If there was
Yeah.
a de minimis amount established that said $50, $40, $25, whatever the amount is, anything under that doesn't have to be even reported. Anything over a value of $50 needs to be reported. And, you know, if it bumps up to that, or if there's any anticipation, or I don't know how you would word it or anything, but
I mean, you just do a review, like, hey, these are the vendors that we consistently get
yeah.
benefits from, you know, these small things, like, these are the ones that we should kind of look at.
Yeah, which, and really,
Just be cognizant of
I
that.
mean, it's, Ryan probably sees the most vendors come through, but it's all hats and pins and
Donuts.
Yeah,
donuts. Yeah.
that's it, basically.
Yeah, and then in the office, it's a couple vendors will, you know, Huntington Bank will swing by, and if there's, you know, business to be discussed, there may be a lunch involved, but I mean,
Yeah.
there is no vendor that consistently, you know, once a month, once every other month, takes anybody out to eat or anything. So there's really not much consistency outside of vendors dropping off freebies for the guys down here. Outside of that, the closest thing that would be a regular benefit is the lunch that they serve me and Casey after an MPPA board meeting. But again, we serve on that board, so it does make is that, or we both serve on the board, so is that, it's not really benefit, that was the gray area for me,
but
but.
there's that customer versus not customer, vendor.
Vendor, yeah, so what is MPPA? And granted, that MPPA is the only, we have a lot of opportunities to, they feed us lunch after the MPPA board meeting. If we're at a conference, MPPA usually wants to take us out to dinner or something. And it's a Michigan networking group type of thing, or MMA. But yeah, you get into what's a vendor, and that's where I think if you, the questionable vendors, MPPA, MMEA, that's gonna be all fall into that de minimis amount, most likely, as a meal, so.
I think part of it is like, what's the intent? Right? Is that we're trying to avoid sort of any appearance that we may be getting influenced by somebody, free talking, so to speak, some of our employees to get a favorable outcome.
Yeah.
And so, a few hats or donuts aren't gonna really do that, right? If somebody comes in and brings donuts every week, well, that's like, okay, that's quite a lot, but again, it's just, but what's in an amount that makes it clear that they're not, all they're trying to do is show appreciation, they're not trying to,
We're not swaying an opinion.
yeah, they're not trying to
Correct.
convince somebody to switch the brand of tool or something like that, it's just,
And the thing with any purchasing side of things, we have policies, we've got a policy that says we need to go out and get multiple quotes, and you get competitive quotes, or go through a pre-bid program like Sourcewell. I have a spending authority that's established by the board. Beyond that, the board has to approve purchases, so, there are, it would be very difficult to sway an individual to the point where you sway an individual with enough authority to make a meaningful shift. Because ultimately anything, I don't think anybody's gonna say, hey, you went with that vendor because you wanted to save 10 cents. They wanted you to buy a $100 tool instead of a $95 tool.
right.
That's not, but the larger purchases, obviously you would want to protect against any perception of, impure influences on that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's just establishing a limit that ensures that that's not in play, right? If somebody brought donuts every week, even that, would that really affect whether we spend an extra $10,000 on a chipper for one company or another because this one company brought us donuts every week? I don't think that would probably impact things, but.
No.
But if they came by and, every few months said, hey,
Don't
here's,
shoot.
here's a few
Don't you touch my donuts. Keep them coming.
Yeah,
I know.
you want to avoid the, hey, if you buy this bucket truck, we'll send you to Florida,
Right.
for a trip or something.
That
That
happens beforehand, right? Of like, hey, well, you guys, here, why don't you guys come out and join us for a trip? And then, oh, by the way, we're gonna try to sell you this truck.
yeah, I'm gonna say you go back to the intent. There's clearly, even if they're low bid, there's still that perception of a potential influence.
Right.
But, the amounts that we're talking about, it's just not.
So I think, bring back some ideas. I think we're entertain that. Again, when I'm looking at it, the whole thing, just my perspective is not as much as the employees as it is the board members and the administration of Lowell Light and Power. I think that's where, because I just don't see alignment having that influence of, what you're doing is, this is to eliminate that idea of influencing decisions. The decisions basically come from you, Ryan, the heads of the departments and the board. That's where I'm looking at, you know what? I don't, board members, we don't need to put ourselves in a situation where we're going on a trip that's paid for by XYZ or whatever. So again, I just, and when like Andrew's talking about the menace, I can't even pronounce it, but you know, those little things, you know, those, I just don't have the feeling that the linemen, and I'm saying the linemen, more so than the office staff, but getting the hats. I mean, I don't know where else, you can go over and look at 4 or 5 different hats with different logos on it right there. And I'm sure, you know, companies, Milwaukee Tools, I mean, when we go to Lyman's Rodeo, you know, they're handing out long sleeve, Milwaukee long sleeve Lyman's shirts. They're, you know, and those things I don't think are influencers. It's the other things that I think can be influencers, where all of a sudden, hey, Perry, would you like to go on a trip to Cancun or whatever? Here, well, you know.
And I think also there's something in there about, you know, is one person being favored in this rather than a broad group of people being favored by somebody offering something. Something with, you know, Milwaukee's logo on it. It's open to everyone to take and get. So it's not an exclusive thing. Like perhaps a meal at, I don't even know what the most expensive restaurant in Grand Rapids is anymore, but that's a little bit more exclusive.
Depends on what you order there.
Yeah.
Ladies with Chris, they're pretty good ones downtown.
So anyway, I think our suggestion is to put something together that you think would address the situations that come up, and we'll go from there.
So just feedback, I heard a lot of $50 de minimis, you know, $600, you know, 1099 limits as a starting point for a policy.
So that 1099 limit, is that what, per person?
Yeah, it's per person over a calendar year.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think we have what we need. We'll do some, pull together some policy language and present at the next board meeting. All right, we'll go to Line Shack stuff. I don't know if, did everybody get a chance to review the proposals?
Yeah.
Quite a bit of changes. I will pull, I'm gonna snag TV, I think,
Okay.
for just a second, Julie. Maybe. TV's not gonna come up now, on mine. Done this 15 times and TV's come up every time.
Do you want me to disconnect?
Shouldn't have to, I should be able to kick you off.
Okay.
All right, well, maybe we won't.
Is it on the network? What you're gonna share on the network? Okay.
It's on my computer.
I'll try disconnect it.
Yeah. I even connected early. I connected at the start of the meeting to make sure I could.
Sure.
Alright, let's try one more time, and if not, we'll just talk about it. There it goes.
Yep.
Alright, Ryan?
Technology, such a wonderful thing.
It's
great when it works.
There we go. All right, so I'll just bring up the bid sheet that was included in the packet. So city received 6 proposals. 4 of them were made proposals during the last RFP. That'd be the antisocial social club, I believe, is the full proposal name, but they only bid $70,000 and didn't meet the RFP requirements. That's supposed to be Copper Rock. Copper Rock Construction submitted they're a new proposer at $100,000. Todd Shaw submitted another proposal for $130,000. Greg Canfield's a new proposer, new potential developer at $150,000. And then Barkus Engineering increased their bid by $5,000, and the Edge submitted a proposal $10,000 higher. And some of the proposals, I think the Todd Shaw proposal and the Edge proposal were, there were some other modifications, but as Perry mentioned, the city is going to be meeting July 25th to interview the potential developers and to potentially select a developer to proceed with. I think, is that the goal of that
Yeah,
meeting?
starting at 4 o'clock on the 25th.
Yeah, so, but wanted to present all these to the board and see if there is a consensus on feedback to city council.
So if you want, I'll chime in. When looking at so if we eliminate the antisocial, because they didn't meet it, so we've got,
And I can pull up any of the full proposals.
all right, so we've got the 5 that we're looking at. I'm before they came in, because I've had conversations and everything, I'll say would have been leaning towards the Edge. I think and the last time, I think they put in a very detailed proposal. But now that, the last time, all the, I can't remember what was it 118 was the highest? Or was it?
Yes, somewhere in that range.
Some there, so they were all within $18,000 of each other. Well, now that you're seeing that with Greg Canfield and Todd Shaw, Greg has gone to $150,000 cash offer. Todd Shaw is $130,000. So again, I'm looking at the highest bid, Greg Canfield. I know one that it's water cooler conversations, different things is like, oh, but in his completion, he put in there would be a 3-year plan. I personally don't have a problem. I mean, it's been sitting there for quite a few years now. And again, for what was accepted last time was $100,000 that the bid that the city took. But for me, for low light power, $50,000 above that I think it allows us to do more things than 130, then 110, then 100. So it for me, it really comes, for the most part, comes down to that. I also look at, if you're looking at the top 2, Greg Canfield and Todd Shaw. Greg has, in the community, has developed, he no longer owns that, sold it, but he had where the furniture store is, which was Superior, the old Superior factory, developed that. He's developed Main Street Inn, which at one time the city was looking at having to tear that down. He's developed the Spring Grove property. And so, and when I look at Todd Shaw, so the Unity property that there is still, you know, I think is still not complete. It's still one building there, the old gymnasium and everything, I think is still an eyesore in the city. And for somebody that was threatening to, or I guess not threatening, because my name was on a lawsuit because of being the chairman. They were suing the city and suing Lowell Light and Power. That's not the kind of person that I personally want to do business with. So I'm looking at just dollar amounts, and I would endorse Greg Canfield. And if I had a second choice, it would be the Edge as compared to, I question the track record of the Todd Shaw group. And so that's where I am with these proposals. Again, I know it's strictly up to the council, but that's my input.
I guess I would suggest that, you know, anybody that has cash on the dash ready to go, be the person that goes with it. Sounds like Canfield's proposal is that anybody that's required to get some kind of financing that's gonna tie things up or delay things is just not worth the time to deal with.
Well, in somewhat defense of the city, the last bid proposal was, when they put the bids in, there was nothing written in there that it was dependent on
State funding.
dependent on tax abatements, depending on rezoning, depending on this, and I don't know where that came into. I mean, the people that put bids in knew what they're getting, they've looked at it, and that's, I mean, I would have said, fine, write the check, put it in escrow, whatever, but that's the issue. I mean, and I agree with you 100%. Again, when somebody's willing to take that risk, and so that's, sorry to interrupt, but that's.
Oh, no, I mean, I said what I said. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It shouldn't, I feel like the city shouldn't be, after the fact, agreeing to contingencies on this. You either want to buy the property or you don't. And so.
And it's not a burdensome amount of money for any respectable developer to have to pay for a piece of property.
I think most of them said the project cost goes around $2 million or thereabouts, right? So it's.
Yeah, and so this land cost for them is minimal.
Part of it, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say it's true. I mean, yeah, minimal, but you know, I don't want to poo-poo, but $100-some thousand is a lot, right? But I think part of it is, I hope the city, which I imagine you did last time, you would do again, if you're doing some due diligence and they say, hey, this projected value is $2 million, well, do they have a plan for that? Are they actually going to do that? Or still like, we're going to spend $2 million on this, and then now we decided to $500,000, you know, or when they say like, hey, we're going to do this much for the economy. I'm assuming you guys are kind of doing your own analysis of what the real impact is going to be and not taking their word for it.
We did ask the ones that, once they were awarded it, to put a plan together, that they would give it to us within like 3 months of a financial plan.
Okay.
And so that's what has been bugging me, that it's taken this long, and then last minute he couldn't come up with the funding. There is one of these quotes that I looked at that look like they're trying to get funding. So again, I'm a little concerned when I go talk with them, exactly how they plan on it.
Yeah.
Spending the money.
Right, that would probably be a good question to ask all of them, right? I saw one of the proposals did something about required funding or something like that.
Mhm.
And there was like a long list, including any customary grants, and it's like,
Right.
what does that mean, you know?
Yep.
And so, I think it was the Copper Rock one got that.
Yep, I believe you're right.
That's it, I think.
Yep.
But I think that'd be a fair question for all of them, is just, what are you expecting, what do you,
To me, I was a little disappointed in the Edge's second proposal. The amount of time that they spent highlighting and crossing things out and putting something in red, they could have easily gone to a Word document and changed it and put it in correctly.
That was
That was, to me, was elementary, so I was disappointed in that, but
well, you mean the
Still a
fact that
nice
they made the effort to
design.
scan it,
what's
they
that?
made the effort to scan it, print it, and write on it.
Correct.
Instead of simply edited it.
Correct,
Did it
so,
yeah.
to me, that was a little bit lackadaisical, but that's mine, and I'll deal with that when I go and talk to them about it.
I guess, yeah, I mean, if anything, it's for, so one can contrast the two more.
The differences, yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Copper Rock is the one that has
Yes,
Brownfield TIF, Michigan
Yes.
Community, MCRP, or the CRP
Mhm.
program.
yeah.
And that last bullet was really weird to me, where it said like, any additional customary may be available.
Well,
Which made me think, well, so if something becomes available and they don't get it, does that turn the project off?
well,
You know, or does that give them grounds to say, oh,
the,
I'm good?
the other thing I looked at, it looked like either it was a 4 or 5 story building, and I don't think the city allows 4-story buildings, I think 3 is maybe the max.
I've heard that, and
Building?
I actually asked Mike about that today, and I think he
Like
was.
that one there.
Yeah, that's,
I don't know if that was 5 or 4.
it looks like 1,
The
2,
basement?
3, 4, 5 to me. I
And
see
In
4.
in a certain zone,
I thought it
because
was.
because you just approved it. You approved King Milling, which is a 6-story building that's going up.
Yeah, so it might be a residential, could be something like that for the fire truck that we do or don't have, I don't know.
Yeah.
It
Mike's,
might be in the ordinance about the height of
He mentioned-
3.5 stories with a pergola roof or whatever you call it, so.
yeah, Mike mentioned in the conversation today that it would, there are implications from a safety standpoint and ability for a ladder to reach the roof.
Yes.
But he didn't speak in any concrete terms. It was something that I think, these are still relatively fresh, so there's still some due diligence on the
Those
city's
questions we're
part.
gonna ask, yeah.
Because it says up to 6 stories in the proposal for that building.
Mhm.
It isn't that,
So it doesn't-
it just says up to 6 stories.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You were just on it.
That's, I guess that's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there it is, yeah.
yep, so,
But I think Harry summed up a good part, it's just really making sure you're evaluating the risk, right?
Oh, they even mentioned that they would need they mentioned they need a variance on that. Apologies.
Yep.
Oh, okay, so at least they did their homework on it.
yeah.
But yeah, and just in terms of evaluating like the financial risk, track record and things like that, it's just, you guys know how to take care of the city a little, so
Well, last time we looked at it from an investment, what does it generate for tax revenue? What would it actually generate for low line power? You put 6 condos in there, 6 meters, 2 businesses, and you guys are generating some money back to low line power as well too, so we try to take care of, look at all those things, what's best. So we'll look at that again.
My concern, from light and power standpoint, I think like the bid price is something that directly affects us. The variance in it this time is much larger, as Perry mentioned. I would say the first proposal being under the minimum is the only one I'm ready to say, hey, that doesn't meet our qualifications. The other 5 are within our qualifications, the effect of all those proposals on LL&P is a neighbor, a 6-story building in front of it. I don't know if that parking, if any of those things affect the office building, I'd ask the city council to consider that, and then, because this has been kind of sitting on our books, and we've kind of discussed the liability of it and those kinds of things, obviously the likelihood of that sale going through and moving it along the process. Those are the things I would recommend or ask respectfully to consider from our standpoint, how it affects us. Other than that, I think, the 5 of them are all fine by me as far as meeting the qualifications of of the bids. And then, you guys are doing your due diligence and figuring out the other things you guys are gonna take into account that we don't necessarily, take into account.
Charlie, did you share with them the questions we're going to ask them, if whether or not there's a question you guys would like for us to ask?
I have not seen a list. I've not seen,
I think I could forward it.
alright, I've not seen
At least
that.
you can see what the questions are that we're going to be asking each participant in the thing.
From a neighbor standpoint, this proposal is, I don't want to say concerning, they propose a bunch of additional parking on the street. I don't know where that's coming from.
You can. Yeah, I don't.
I mean, I don't think it's feasible. I'm not sure. I know Julie parks on the end there, and it's one lane, and they're showing parking, and that's not their property going up that far.
Right.
So, from a neighborly standpoint, this project gives me some concern. In the fact that the building is proposed to be so large, that's a lot of people coming and going, and there isn't, from my perspective, and I'm uneducated from a civil engineering standpoint, I don't see their parking proposal as feasible. So from a neighborly standpoint, this is the one that creates some, just questions that would need to be answered.
To me, there are other people that have spent money on third floor renovating their apartments, condos, whatever you want to call it. You put up that, and I would just block the view that I paid for, and it's gone. So, things to consider. I did forward you that, Charlie.
All right, thank you.
2 more stories on top of what's there, or 3, or what, I mean, it's not necessarily, 5, but yeah, 5 more stories on top of what's there is not going to block our view of anything that we can't already see. The existing building blocks anything at ground level anyway.
At ground level, from the boardroom, yeah,
From the building gets really big to the full length of the property,
yeah.
then that's a different.
And also, I'll be honest, I don't know what right we have to dictate what view we have.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about living in the city. You can have a high rise next door, and you have the world's greatest view, and next day you got a view of somebody's bathroom.
Right.
But from a neighborly standpoint, I think the traffic involved in a 6-story building, the occupants, parking is a major concern. And I
What was their total?
100,000?
their purchase price was
No,
100.
no, but
or
what was did they give a,
17 units, you mean?
4.5 million totaling 17 units.
it just,
34 cars.
I'm sure they've all done their homework and everything, and just all of a sudden putting a 6-story building. I'm just always looking at Eagle and Median. They're not the easiest people to work with. And, I mean, you had to put a 6-story building up on that, you'd have to put some big borings down and everything else.
Yeah, to me, this one has a lot of stipulations and a lot of questions.
Yep, I know the company, I've seen a lot of their projects there, they do a fine job.
Absolutely.
They are really outstanding in their field, but something to consider.
So, I guess, what would you like to see
Do we want to send anything?
in a letter? I mean, I like what you said, Daniel, all the 5 of them meet your requirements and everything. Do you have, I mean, I'm, for me, can be opinionated, I mean, I guess, I just don't like how the whole Unity building thing that whole project has gone on. And or I guess, Jim, you can share my thoughts. I mean,
I agree, I was on council at the time, and it was definitely a volleyball back and forth, and who's serving, and who's got the ball, and putting a lot of heartache on a lot of people, the board, you guys at Lowell and Power, even them guys. Who was his partner, Jerry, somebody?
Jerry Zangstrom.
Yeah, exactly, I don't see.
Which I don't see his name
I don't see
listed
him
in this.
listed on this one, so
Right.
I'm not sure if it was Reverend Zanstra or one we were dealing with, but it was heartache. I hope this, if they were selected, I hope it goes much smoother. It has to, can't get any worse. You know, so. I'll take that into consideration when I go in and rate them.
So, I guess I'm gonna speak to the board. So, are you, as a board, are you comfortable with having Jim, because he's our liaison, communicating what we talked about, or do you want to put something in a letter?
I think Jim understands that.
I'm fine with that, I mean, it's,
I'm fine with Jim,
it's
but,
recorded, so it's documented, we don't have
Right.
to write it down too.
right. So I think we're just, Jim's our liaison, he sat in the meeting, he knows everybody's input on this, and he can convey those.
Charlie, I will sit down with you beforehand to make sure what I'm saying is really what you guys all feel, so I'll make sure I'm
All
with
right.
Charlie before that.
And we'll,
Next week.
I was gonna say, I'm out, I'll get with you, I'm out some coming up. We'll talk about it later in the
Right, next week?
Next Thursday, Friday, I'll be out, but I'll be here through next Wednesday.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can set it up, okay, sounds good.
Quick one.
No?
All right, that was that. All right, Julie, you can take back over.
So you're running the rest of the meeting, Julie?
All right.
No,
That's not what you meant?
no, I'm just
No,
That's
no.
exactly-
playing it up there
That's
for you.
that's exactly what I meant, so.
No,
You're not
it's
making,
not funny.
I'll say you're not making friends over there. Neither am I. All right, we'll roll on to informational items if you like.
Okay, yep.
All right, so we'll start with performance data. This is, again, a lot of the same. This is the last month of the fiscal year. So these are end of board reporting numbers, but these are not final sales. There will be some adjustments during the audit to sales, but ultimately, we finished the year roughly a little over 4.5% over last year's revenues, and continue, or I'm sorry, that's on the month. Everything's on the month, so continue to see higher numbers in the same month last year, which is what we would expect. But other than that, the industrial customers, we saw a dip, but we're not seeing growth in the quantity of industrial customers at this point, and there are just a variety of different factors that influence their load levels from month to month. So we saw a 1 month dip, but still overall for the year we saw pretty significant increases across the board. So keep rolling on to cost per kilowatt hour. Again, not much to report here as we continue to anticipate higher than or above average purchase power prices. We can expect to see some of these numbers creep up as the PCA continues to creep up. Investments in cash. This was, we did finish cash up slightly, but down from this time last year. And unfortunately, that's not unexpected, but this was a pretty challenging year from a cash management standpoint. Some of the things that impacted cash is not receiving the funds from the line shack sale, about $140,000 in capital calls from NPPA for our ESP, the Energy Services Project, We ended up finishing the year about $300,000+ over budget in purchase power from volatility. So when you add all that up, you know, that's a pretty significant impact on cash. So we will talk about that a little bit more, and more specifically, we'll spend quite a bit of time next board meeting talking about cash analysis that I'm asking Megan to take a look at for next board meeting. So with that, we'll roll on to aging analysis. One of the things that's real nice to report here is that anything over the green and red bars have really dwindled this past month. And again, these numbers are not necessarily 100% indicative of where our bad debt's going to be. Obviously, if you go on to the next graph, you get into delinquent balances. Again, we focus a lot on the balance of inactive accounts, and that number is still always going to be much higher than the bad debt write-off because of the time difference in write-off versus this is currently what is inactive, and that's the number I still pay attention to and we still look at quite a bit, but it's really just an indicator of where your future bad debt could be. But you know, with an account having to sit inactive for a year before they're written off, staff collects quite a bit of that inactive balance before it actually reaches the write-off. Electric requirements is just you know, every month, happy to answer any questions. And again, another month of seeing steady increases. Sorry, one more graph, Julie. Steady increases in paperless billing, auto pay, and portal registrations. Just want to highlight the great work that the office staff's doing here to continue to promote this and make sure we're getting some value out of this product. And I'm thrilled to see you know, portal registrations and auto pay and paperless billing. Every one of those is a savings to us and our customers. So always good to see. They're doing a great job.
It's kind of encouraging that there's continuous registrations, even though it's about 6 months or so after rollout. People are still, it's not like there's an initial interest and it just died off. It's like,
And that's talking with the vendor. They help do some promotion stuff, and Julie already remember what I'm about to say, but you know, they talk about, yeah, you flatten out, and then they run a promotion, and you see this jump, and then it flattens out, and then a year later they do another promotion. But the way I take it, and I can hear a little bit of what happens at the front office, it's our staff, it's people. Do you want to sign up? I hear it 3 times a day. We have 3 customers come in, there's 3 customers asked if they want to sign up for paperless billing or for the portal or leverage those benefits. So this is the power of human promotion. And then we will continue to, you know, the Julie and our staff are running, you know, some promotions and some drawings from time to time to try and encourage some more adoption. Is this what went out on the front of the envelope?
The front of the envelope was to be paperless.
Yeah, to go paperless, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, we're starting to use the outside of the envelope for marketing, which is coincidentally enough, APPA sent out, I don't know if you're part of that listserv, but they sent out, there was a group asking if anybody did the front of it, did the front of the envelope, the outside of the envelope, and a lot of people came back and said that's where we get the most response. It's quick, it's easy, they're guaranteed to see it without having to unfold another piece of paper and pay attention to another piece of paper. So
like quick, easy messages.
So we're really promoting, but yes, I appreciate the acknowledgement of that because it's truly.
Julie, I think I'm on the red line, which is auto pay. We still get a bill? Even
Yeah,
if-
auto pay you do.
Okay.
Paperless, you would still get an email notifying you that your bill is available. And you can go log on and look at it, but if you're not, unless you're signed up for paperless, then you don't receive a paper bill.
Okay.
You can always view your bill online.
Yeah, I think Lynette said them, and I just thought that if it auto pay, we see it, the bank sees it, and just takes it, and I never see a bill.
Yeah.
And you'll still get a bill copy because I think it says
Email that says click here and then log in to view your bill.
Okay.
if you're on paperless billing, right?
Paperless, yeah.
Well, I
Right.
think that your bill's ready does the same thing.
Oh, all right.
Like
Okay.
it says it's ready,
Yeah.
You have to click here to
Yeah.
log in, yeah.
We'll see some change.
All right, so that's performance data. I will hand it over to Ryan for outage discussion.
There was a few outages this month, 3 tree-related issues and 2 squirrels met their demise. One of the tree-related ones was just a small limb that fell out of a tree and landed in the exact right spot to cause a problem, and then the other ones are known areas where we need to do some tree trimming, tree removal, that kind of duty. So we're going to be getting after those fairly soon. We have giant amounts of things to do, and unless they start really attacking us with tree issues and being repeat outages, we're hoping to get a couple more things done, and we're going to be doing some regular tree trimming for probably a couple of months to help take care of some of that stuff.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll roll on to the income statement. Overall, I'll focus on just the summary page. This was a tough year, but sales ultimately finished about 1%, 1% under budget. We've talked about some of the factors that led to that, some project delays, also some variations in load projections coming from MPPA potentially, and so overall, 1% deviation is not great, but with the factors that we were dealing with, that's ultimately what materialized. Service revenue and overall revenue was elevated quite a bit, but a lot of that overage was tied up in mutual aid revenue, and our auditors request that we book the funds from mutual aid as revenue. Other than that, biggest line item of note is purchase power expenses, $310,000 over budget. It's over 6.5% over budget. I guess only other thing I'll say with sales revenue, I was pretty disappointed that we came up $50,000 less than $9 billion. Just to be able to say we're a $9 million a year revenue company. We'll see what comes through with the final adjustments and where our final sales numbers end up, but
Yeah.
I like to hit that mark. But looking down at the operating expenses, I'm proud that most items came in under budget that were in our control. We're limited to the control that we have over our energy prices. I don't think anybody forecasted across the board the disruption and volatility in the energy market, but other than that, generation expenses came in under budget. The only reason distribution expenses came in slightly over budget is because we booked, just like we booked the mutual aid and revenue, we booked the mutual aid expenses in our operating expenses. So slightly over. Customer accounting expense was under budget. Marketing and advertising was slightly over budget, but it's still a relatively small overall number, and that was really attributed to a lot of promotional work tied up with the new portal, so there's a return on that investment. Admin expenses came in under budget, office insurance and maintenance slightly over budget, but overall, we ate into that $310,000 overage in purchase power expenses with quite a bit of savings in other areas. So unfortunately, it just was a challenging year. Overall though, net income, current month at $145,000 positive net income is exactly what we needed to finish out the year and get us in a good position for the GASB entry and the end of year entries that aren't reflected in this income statement. So ultimately, we finished the year, or finished this income statement, but not the year, with just over a $400,000 positive net income, which was slightly behind last year and even further behind our budget, but Again, a lot of that is attributed to that purchase power expense.
Charlie, line item, what does, when you say insurance, what insurance are you referring to in that line item?
Oh, so that's, if you roll down to,
Because I just noticed talking with the city that our insurance premiums are going up, and I don't know if you've seen any things about increasing for you guys coming up as well.
no, from an insurance standpoint, that's a catch-all. So if you look in that, it's property and liability insurance,
Right, yeah.
came in slightly over budget, and then there's just office supplies, fees, dues, phone, maintenance. There's a lot of other things that kind of roll up into that, but from an insurance-specific standpoint, we did not, we haven't seen huge increases yet. We actually saw a pretty significant decrease in our workers' comp insurance. We saw minimal increases on property. I don't think I've seen actual property renewal or property liability rate renewal that comes, we're under the city's umbrella, but
Okay,
yeah, for overall, we've not seen significant increases at this point. But then we also book safety damages and safety expenses, damages, and injuries tied up in that big bucket as well. And I would have to defer to an accountant to what actual items hit those individual GL accounts. Any other questions on the operating report?
One comment I have, and you're probably gonna laugh because I'm gonna talk about trends again, but I think in the past we have looked at some trends. Maybe we relied on the auditor to kind of provide sort of like the last 5 years or some kind of.
Peter does that every year. He'll do
Yeah.
power supply, maintenance, he'll run through the audited, he'll make those from audited financials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was also kind of wondering, maybe it'd be useful if we did a similar thing just in terms of the variance, not for every little item, but just for some of the big categories. In terms of, I guess I'm kind of curious, like, it'd be interesting to see how much uncertainty should we expect in our budget?
How much variance to budget?
Or just to be aware of, right? So, for example, like, if we're off by 1%, is that really bad or is that good, right? Or is that just, or are we seeing like a trend? It's like, hey, you know what? Our operating expenses, we've been off by. We used to be off by 3% a year. Now we've been off by 10% a year for the last 3 years. What's going on? And maybe there's a reason. Maybe it's just because of this environment. But I think it might help us just kind of be kind of more self-aware of our budget process and just look at, hey, why can't we ever predict this thing right? Or we really nailed this, but then this year we missed it. Is there a reason? Or I think it'll just be helpful feedback for us.
Yeah, we can look in at, I'd say that there are a lot of assumptions that go into them.
Yeah.
One of the biggest being, how much time do we capitalize versus expense? And that number fluctuates quite a bit. We've recently, as part of the budgeting process, we recently started doing an analysis on what should we expect. A couple years ago, we assumed that 50% of the time would be expensed and 50% of the time would be capitalized. Looked back at previous trends and said, that's not quite accurate. So I think it would make sense to do in big buckets, because like, if you get really down into the detail and you look at like overhead line maintenance.
So I don't think that'd be.
That number's so gonna be, or tree trimming is gonna be determined by the needs, but when you look at, all right, let's look at generation expenses. Yeah.
Or operating, just those big bold capital ones kind of, and.
We will start some conversations internally. I'll be honest, this is a really tough workload time. We're preparing for the audit and we have a maternity leave coming up soon, so, but we'll see what, if the data's there and it's just a matter of manipulating the data, then it's pretty, I won't say easy because I'm not the one doing it, but it's more feasible if the data is readily available to just manipulate how the data is visualized. So we'll look into it, and I think there's a lot of value in starting to trend those. I'd be really interested to see what the trend of variances in purchase power is, because we've had a very stable market for about 10 years, it's been a very stable market, and this year, I would bet that we don't see a 6.5% variance in purchase power very often.
Yep.
But that's me making an intuitive statement, not a factual, so. I'll let the data determine it, but I think, just talking with Steve and talking with other utilities, this is, there's more volatility this year than most have seen since 2008.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to say that our budgeting process is poor, it's just I think it was insight. I mean, it might just tell us that our budgeting process is awesome.
Yeah,
Which we kind of believe, but,
it can always get better, but yeah, I think there's a lot of value, we'll see if we can
and I don't
pull
think,
some of that together.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's necessarily urgency in that, I mean, it would be most valuable, I think, when building the next budget.
Yeah.
So probably perhaps next winter, spring or something.
Yeah, I think I'll put it on the list, and, again, I've got my brain ticking, so I may just do it myself out of curiosity,
Yeah,
but, yes.
yeah, I mean, you and I kind of wish I had time for some of that stuff, it'd be fun just to play with it and see what happens, but
I would,
I would
yeah,
just waste too many hours.
I'll say if I do it, it'll probably be sitting on the couch at home, so, I don't have much time during the day, but, I think it would be a very interesting analytical, visualization, so.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions on the income statement? All right, we'll roll on to capital projects, and I'll just go straight to the summary, Julie. All right, yep, perfect. So finish the year, again, savings offset cost overruns again, which is great. Ended up finishing the year about $65,000 under the total budgeted amount, and that included, $113,000 going to the dock addition, which is, we anticipated. It's been a learning, we'll just say it's been a learning process. Everything takes a little bit longer to do out there than I think originally anticipated. The guys did an amazing job. We're still not quite done with it. We've got some electrician work that still needs to be done, and then some rec out work, but Ryan actually just talked about that project yesterday, I don't remember when it was. It's only Tuesday, so it's this week. There's, I think you said two homes that need to be converted over, and it'll require an electrician to do the work. And then I think there's still some lingering cable that Comcast couldn't take off the pole at the time. So we're coordinating with them to get that wrecked out, and then we'll be able to wreck out the last of the few poles. And we're going to shut the door on this one that's now going to spread 4 fiscal years, I think. But it's been a great project. The guys have done an amazing job. I drove through, I don't remember when we drove through last, Ryan, but a few weeks ago. And if you haven't driven through, go take a drive, take a detour. It's amazing. It's night and day. The work is clean. They did an amazing job, and reliability is going to be up because of it. System losses are down. Have a positive impact on system losses. Positive impact on reliability. Positive impact on aesthetics. Tree trimming requirements. Just been a great project. It's taken quite a bit of time to complete, but there's a lot of value in there to justify the time and commitment.
If I have a question.
Yes.
So what do you do with that $65,000? Do you carry it over to next year's? Do you put it in what's left over? Do you put it in vehicle replacement fund? What do you do with it?
It just goes away. Budget's a 1-year kind of snapshot of what we're going to do this year. We did carry $50,000, not knowing what this ultimate number is going to be. We did carry $50,000 over, or included in this year's capital budget is anticipation of $50,000 of continuation projects, but that's still reflected in our current year's budget. So ultimately, this is just a piece to the pie. But no, if for some reason we finished the year with extra cash, because that's ultimately $66,000 of extra cash, but that's been more than offset in cost overruns, that you can't really justify doing anything with that cash. But if we didn't have the cash calls, didn't have the power supply disruption, we would be having a discussion about, we have funds, do we want to do something with those funds? Do we want to make a pension contribution? Do we want to, add a small capital project, or, but at this point, my recommendation is just let it be and let it support the overall budget and the overall cash flow of the utility.
Sharon, can you refresh mine and the viewers at home who are gonna watch this where the dock addition took place in case they wanna get out and look at it?
Yes, so dock addition is,
Valley Vista Housing.
the dock addition is what I know it as. I've also been told nobody else in town knows it as the dock addition.
Okay, well,
Right.
But it's the only thing I've heard it referred to, so it's behind Tractor Supply, behind Taco Bell,
Okay.
behind the new Culver's, Jimmy John's, that's neighborhood in behind there, Valley Vista, Sibley, Jane Ellen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason why the dock addition is that was the name of the developer that developed that.
And the last name was spelled D-O-K, not D-O-C, but.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really? We don't care. Interesting trivia.
He made it DOC.
All right, any questions on the final capital budget stuff? Nice thing too is, as you will see come next month, the solar control panel and the natural gas compressor will not be there because the debt has been paid off, which is always great. We love debt being paid off. Good. All right, so we will move on to manager's report. Happy to answer any questions. Did not have an MPPA board meeting between our board meetings. It was a unique situation. It's the first time that's happened, but we have a meeting tomorrow. Casey and I will be going to Lansing. We did have a transmission investment service committee meeting, and Perry and Craig heard a little bit about a transmission investment opportunity that MPPA is currently evaluating. We learned some more details of that project during the meeting. That project involves quite a few other counterparties, so we can't really discuss a whole lot of the details, but it's a significant project, and it could be a great investment for us if it materializes. Once they get through the economic review and the legal review, and if it looks favorable, we will be coming back to the board for board consideration of participation in that project. Casey and I also participated in the Bell River semi-annual administrative meeting. Interesting development with Bell River is they have announced that they are going to evaluate refueling that facility and repurposing it to, I'm guessing, it's my personal assumption that they will be looking at probably a combined cycle natural gas plant. But Casey, I don't know if you have any other insight into that. But it's an interesting development. Other than that, big item was Craig and I attended the APPA National Conference in Nashville last month. It was a really good conference. There was representatives you can see from a lot of our West Michigan utilities. It was a great networking opportunity. I think Craig would agree that the networking was extremely valuable, and just the content of the conference was really good content. Had Harvard Business School professor and expert on supply chains come in and give a pretty in-detailed presentation on that. Had a very renowned economist present on economic trends. So some big picture items, and then also some breakout sessions that hit on a variety of topics. The neatest being small modular reactors. It's something to keep an eye on as a board member. It's not something that's happening in Michigan right now, but UAMP, the Utah Association of Municipal power supply, I don't know. It's a municipal group out of Utah, is 7 or 8 years into a project to develop and deploy the first small modular nuclear reactor in the country. And we saw some economics on it. I think, did you sit in on that one as well? I think
No, I did not.
it's a very interesting topic to continue to follow. We saw last month with Casey's presentation on our current state of our power supply and the future trends in power supply, that we really, in order to decarbonize at the pace that many feel is necessary, we really need to find carbon-free baseload generation. I'm biased, and I know people, there's issues with nuclear, but I personally don't see a more viable carbon-free baseload power supply than nuclear. Again, that can be debated for years, but it'll be interesting to watch this project come together. So, but other than that, there were a lot of just really good breakout sessions. Very busy event. We're busy from time we got up to the time we went to bed, either at the conference or networking. So I don't know if you have anything to add about the conference.
I could now, or I could wait till board comments time. So you can keep your flow
All right.
going.
Charlie, when are they looking at having that nuclear test open?
2029
2029?
is the anticipated COD date. There are a lot of steps between between now and then. And I'm not remotely intimate enough with the project or have any understanding of how reasonable 2029 is, but right now 2029 is the COD date. So they've had quite a bit of government funding to help get through the exploratory phases, and it's going to be an interesting development. The concept of small modular reactors really addresses quite a bit of the challenges of developing new nuclear. There's been very, very little new nuclear brought online in the U.S. this century, since 2000. I think there's been one reactor brought online in Tennessee. There's been some retoolings, quite a bit of retoolings, but before that, I think the last one was maybe in the 80s. So there's just not been a lot of nuclear development, and we're seeing a lot of plants reach their end of life, like Palisades reached its end of life last month, and Casey brought that up in a presentation. I won't hit on too many distribution projects, except for I want to publicly praise the staff for the work that they did at the Stony Bluff Phase 4 dig-in. It was nothing less than impressive, that's for sure. Ryan, and I forgot to include pictures in that. I got pictures of Ryan and equipment. Ryan was out there really leading the charge and helping develop thought processes and lending a hand, and that project really went well. I don't know the details, but I think we actually accomplished more with our guys leading the charge than we did at Harvest Meadows when we had another contractor in there helping as well with much bigger equipment. I think to the tune of 50% more a day with our guys leading the charge. So, and there was a little bit of a push. I told Ryan I'd like to see that project get as much done as possible in this current fiscal year. Or the last fiscal year, wanted as much done as possible before we ticked over to July 1, and they hit the ground running. They did an amazing job, and just want to publicly thank them for the awesome work that they were doing. Casey's had a very busy month watching power supply, anticipating running. We did run one day, but market prices are looking like we will economically dispatch our units quite a bit more. We've seen power prices come down with natural gas prices coming down over the last month or so, but when we were in Nashville, we were seeing some day ahead prices 3 to 4 times higher than what would trigger an economic dispatch of our units. They didn't ultimately end up materializing too much. We didn't see those $400 real-time prices, but Casey was at the ready and has done a great job making sure those units are in tip-top shape, ready to operate when we can. So he's had a very busy last month or so. We talked about safety, the work-related injury last month. That employee, we saw him today and making a great recovery and is still in great spirits, and we're happy to see him today.
While we're talking about safety,
Yes.
because I was gonna bring it up later at board comments. So I just want Ryan to just speak about what we do. So watching TV and watching the weather and seeing these 90 to triple digit throughout the country. I saw where they had a new app that some company was using that kept track of a person's body core temperature, their heart rate, different things. And I just want, I talked to them, but for the general public, I just want the public to know what we do in those cases where we're getting those temperatures up there, because it is our line workers, it is a dangerous job. They have to be on their toes at all time when they're out there working, and heat can play a factor. So if you want to just kind of let the general public know what we do with our employees.
Well, I guess we put a lot of effort into making sure they have everything they need. We purchased a ice machine, like a industrial, commercial, restaurant grade ice machine that has, I think it's capable of producing 350 pounds of ice per day. If you use that, if you keep taking ice out of there, where it draws it down to where it kicks the ice machine on again, that's a lot of ice. So they can fill their coolers up with ice and waters every morning, which they do during hot days. And it might seem weird, but when you're out there working in that kind of weather every day, you do get used to it. You kind of get acclimated to it, and you kind of keep an eye out for your fellow workers. You be your brother's keeper or whatever you want to call it. Just you keep an eye on guys. Like, hey, are you feeling all right? You don't look too good, or whatever. If you go up to the water cooler, you bring a water back for everybody else, and you make sure and carry one out to the guy that's on the backhoe or something, because he's on the backhoe. He's not walking over to get waters on his own, and you just always are keeping an eye on things. And if somebody looks like they're needing some time, get them in the air conditioning, get them in the shade, make sure and take care of them that way. I think the guys do really, really good with that. We just sent a couple guys down to the Midwest co-ops territory for mutual aid, and it was one of the hottest times we've had this summer. And it was worse down there than we had it here. I mean, the heat index was in the 103, 104 range. That's some difficult heat to keep moving in, and they kept right on rolling. And they had plenty of waters, plenty of ice. That co-op was set up the same way as us. They had a big ice machine. They made sure the guys were stocked with stuff, Gatorades, everything. So I can't imagine what else we could do for the fellas other than to let them sit in here and read books during the in the air conditioning, because we do really good around here. I've seen a lot of different methods and ways in lacking water and ice in the past and other areas, other places I've worked, the contractor world, and we are above and beyond, I feel, and the guys take care of each other. I think that's the most important part. They care and they watch out for each other, and that's the important part.
I think more than the safety culture plays a big role. They know that if they're pushing the limits, there's no job that's more important than safety. And they know that if it gets excessively hot and they get towards the danger area, they need to stop working. They need to take care of themselves. Line shack we've covered. Cost of service. We did have our kickoff meeting with UFS today. In addition to the cost of service study, or in conjunction with it, there's two additional items that I've asked them to explore, and they also recommend both of them basically. But the first is unbundling our electric rates. Right now, our electric rates, the kilowatt hour rate encompasses a energy charge and a distribution charge, and it's all rolled into 1 kilowatt hour rate. The move towards additional transparency is to break out the energy component and the distribution component, because ultimately the energy component goes to pay our power supply bill, the distribution component goes to maintain the electric system. So we're going to look at and probably make a proposal to the board that would include unbundling our rates, and that would just make us a continued leader in the rate arena. Holland currently, I believe, is the only municipal I'm aware of in Michigan that's doing that, but it's something that the most public service commissions require of IOUs, just out of transparency. The other thing being leveraging our line extension policy for a level 2 EV charger rebate. A lot of utilities are running them through their EWR programs. I personally would rather not run it through the EWR program or the Smart Energy program based on how that's funded. But there is load growth there from an EV level 2 charger that would allow us to provide a rebate based on anticipated additional margin that comes from that piece of equipment, and that's ultimately what the line extension policy does. So those are just two other tidbits to add in. You can see that the PCA continues to climb month over month. It's what we had forecasted, and I will continue to put those numbers in the board packet so you all can see. And as we get a little further down, throw a graph in there and trend it a little bit. I know that would make Andrew. Now, I think we all know, but I do think once we have more data, it will be a good graph to potentially even just make a standing graph that includes that information, so we can start to look at what our PCA is doing over time. Rotary, I was officially installed into Rotary last month, a couple weeks ago. It's been a process, but I know that's been something we've talked about quite a bit at board table. And I know that's it's important to me and important to the board. Wanted to highlight Safety Town. I sent out an email. Safety Town, for one, we participated in Safety Town with Impact Church, which is a really cool program that they put on every summer to just teach safety across a variety of topics to, I believe, kids that are going into kindergarten is the oldest group, and I think they come back a year or two, but youngsters, and we went out and were able to spend an hour or so with them talking about electric safety and what to do, what not to do. Got to show them some cool equipment. I was happy that Lisa asked me to participate, and so I got to do most of the talking to the kids, and that was always fun. But what I thought was great is Emily did a Facebook post to highlight it, and it got picked up by APPA and was blasted out to the whole country in their daily current. So I forwarded that email out because it's just cool. It's the second time, I believe, since Emily's taken over our social media, we've been picked up by APPA. So I know that's, I hear a lot from Perry, who's been around and been outside of our service territory. We're held in high regard wherever we go, and being recognized at the national level is always great. Office roof replacement. We have signed a quote and are going to get the office roof replaced, the last piece of it, the last third. So that's like everything else, that's probably not going to happen for a few months, but the ball is rolling. It was under my spending authority for budgeted items, so we didn't bring the quotes and everything to the board, but we've done a lot of work with Sunray. We worked a lot with Sunray and Weather Shield. One of the ultimately Sunray came in the lowest bid, but they were our preferred vendor for that section of the roof, because they did the other two sections of the office building, and it just simplifies things quite a bit. Want to notify the board that we have entered into a partnership with a company called HR Collaborative, which with the departure of Anna and her full retirement, it left some gaps and some questions as far as, where do we go from here, and ultimately look to a team of people to be able to supplement our needs, and it's really been a good relationship so far. It's created a lot of work for Julie and some of her staff, but they are doing an amazing job. But wanted to notify the board of that. Last month, the future policy consideration, I believe we will bring this, I'm anticipating bringing a policy next month. We do not have a board-approved policy regarding how we handle return checks and return payments. We have a fee that is part of the approved fee structure that the board approves, but everything else has been procedural, and this is just how we handle things. And when does a customer become a cash-only customer? What payments are going to be required for a return payment? There's just a few things that we're going to, we want to flesh out and really do our due diligence on what other utilities are doing and how they're protecting themselves, and anticipate continuing to look into that, and hopefully bringing a policy proposal for the board to consider next month. As Ryan mentioned, Zach and Mark provided some mutual aid support to Midwest Energy and Communications. Last month they got hit with a pretty bad storm and were gone for almost a full week, weren't they?
Yeah, I think 4 days.
Left out on a Tuesday, got back on a Friday, but went and provided some support to a fellow not-for-profit utility. Not the Muni World, but it was a co-op and a not-for-profit, and happy to provide help, and happy to help their customers get their lights turned back on. Did want to mention to the board that I'll be out of the office on vacation July 21st through the 22nd or 27th, and then I'll be attending a conference. One-day vacation is about all I get. And then I'll be at a conference up at Shaney Creek July 28th and 29th. Road cleanup day is the 27th at 5 p.m. It'll be the first one that I won't be able to attend, but I'm betting that they'll hold down the fort and pick up the slack for me. Cybersecurity training, if you've not done it, please do so. Perry, we talked about that today. Let's see, conferences. We do have the MMEA Fall Conference scheduled for October 6th at Firekeepers down in Battle Creek. It is a one-day event, so it's just a Thursday. I will be sticking around for the Fall General Membership meeting on day 2, but the conference is just that Thursday. If anybody would like to attend, please let me know. But it should be I think everybody's planning on driving down that day and coming back basically, but we'll have a pretty good attendance from the staff. It's a conference that we try and bring a good representation to. I think Julie will be able to participate this year.
Yeah.
Megan won't.
Right.
But Ryan and Casey are planning on attending as well. So if anybody can make it, please let me know. We'll get you registered. And other than that, just want to celebrate Lisa's 1-year anniversary. I want to thank her for everything she's done in year 1, because she's very valuable and has she was forced to hit the ground running. There's no doubt about that. So she's doing a great job, and want to thank her for that. Other than that, that is the manager's report. And then pictures. So this is some of the Casey's work Casey's been working on that's described in his memo. Just more improvements. We'll roll on to the next couple pictures. More work that Casey's doing. Yeah, you can see the way it used to be supported versus the way it's supported now. I should have put them in a different order, but I'm not that good with Adobe or any.
the pipe was just kind of wedged in there
Yeah.
before, so.
We,
Sonified.
we did receive one of our trucks. It just showed up it just showed up. We got no notice, didn't know it was even coming. Somebody called and said, we got a truck for you. Still haven't seen an invoice for it and still haven't seen the second truck.
Well,
But I'm guessing we'll see the second invoice. The second truck is, I'm less confident we'll see the second truck.
Did they deliver it to the right location?
So,
Why you haven't received an invoice?
so do you equip it or do you send it out?
We do it.
Then I got some pictures from the mutual aid event. You won't see that in Lowell very often. That looks more like Tennessee than it does Michigan to me, so.
Tractor looks great.
So they had to get pulled out? They got a little stuck, did they?
I've never actually heard the story of that
They
picture.
did, they did get stuck getting back to that pole, it was just a little wet there, but they said that guy was so excited to help them out. He wanted to go get a bigger tractor because he was so excited. Mark's like, oh, no, that's gonna be good.
It is not the first time I've seen a truck pulled out with a tractor. Like I said, far more common in Tennessee. We have farmers on speed dial who help us out. We did. Yeah, just some more pictures of the guys working. I mean, they got hit hard. The next picture is a really neat piece of equipment. It tells you the kind of area that they were having to work in, if that's the equipment they were pulling out.
So did they take the service 2 trucks down?
Pickup truck in the bucket.
Okay.
They wanted a two-man crew, so that's
So that wasn't our buck, they took,
They took our big bucket.
our big white.
right.
bucket, Yep. the
Yeah.
This one
55.
right here,
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, not the service truck.
That and a pickup.
that I pick up,
And then,
Must look at that, was that the pool?
That pole on the bottom?
Right
Is this-
there.
Yeah, look at it.
Oh, yeah, snapped.
That tells you the wind blew pretty good.
is that primary underground coming off of it?
I don't believe so.
I don't know what that is. It doesn't
No, It's
matter.
like communications.
So, yeah, they got hit pretty hard. And then their president and CEO sent a nice letter, out thanking, and I think they sent some stuff down this way, so.
More donuts.
I believe they're gonna give them shirts and hats and stuff, because they asked for sizing, so
Oh.
it'll be something snazzy.
Nice.
Well, so this is, I decided to, the MERS annual valuation's in your packet, but we have some interesting things going on. Julie and I have been talking quite a bit about it. One of the things you'll notice in there, if you go to table 6, you don't need to, is while we have an underfunding, obviously, in our 01 division, which is our pension division, our main bulk of our pension, in the majority of our assets and the majority of our liabilities. But we also have a hybrid division that was a transitional program going from full pension to ultimately where we are now with just a defined contribution plan. So there was this short period, maybe 5 to 7 years, Barry, you know better than me, you were here, but 5 to 7 years of this hybrid division. And we don't know exactly why it's happened this way, but we've got a significant overfunding there. We've just continued to pay the required, actuarially determined required contributions every year, and we've seen this trend in continuing to overfund that to the tune of, right now we're overfunded by slightly over $100,000. And so we're working with MERS, but on what to do with that and what the impacts are. But what I've done here is look at the sum of our 2 plans. Instead of looking at them individually, I've summed them up and created some graphs. What you'll notice in the blue line is our actuarial accrued liability continues to increase, even though our plans are closed. Theoretically, that should not happen. But what we're seeing is that's a result of changes in assumptions. And we've seen a significant reduction in the actuarially assumed rate of return. And actually this year, MERS It used to be sitting at 7.35%, which is too high, and they knew it was too high, so they implemented a dedicated gains policy, where essentially if the portfolio performance exceeds the actuarially assumed rate of return, they will use those overages to buy down that assumed rate of return. So through the good market conditions in 2021, they were able to take those gains and realize a larger percentage of those gains and ultimately buy down that rate of return down to 7%. And they, talking with the CEO of MERS, it needs to continue to move much closer to 6.5%. The problem with that is it creates significant swings in your funding percentage and in your assets. But what's happened this year is you'll notice in the orange line, that asset line climbed quite a bit, and that is partially because they realized a higher percentage of the gains that we saw last year. Normally, they take your gains or your losses and you only realize 20% of them every year, and they smooth it out over a 5-year window, so you don't have big swings year to year based on a one-year look back. But they realized a higher percentage. I have some concerns with that policy. It does not prepare us very well for market downsides, which we're seeing right now. So don't know what the impact will be, but I also understand, had a very lengthy conversation with MERS and Karen, CEO, about this policy, and they realize and recognize that it definitely minimizes some of our downside protections by implementing it, but they need to get the assumed rate of return down to an acceptable level so that they're not out of range from what the actuaries say they need to be. But overall, when you take our pension plan, our 01 division, the old school pension, and our hybrid plan, we have cumulatively crept over that 60% mark ourselves and have ran to 61.5%. We're going to explore with MERS and present information for the board later this year on what the impacts would be of taking that overfunding, that roughly $100,000 overfunding in the hybrid plan, and moving it to the surplus division that we recently created. If we move it out of the actual plan and move it into a surplus, those funds are not used in determining future required contributions, but they do go towards your overall funding percentage. So what that ultimately does is, right now, if we leave those funds there, our required contribution to the hybrid plan will actually be less than what it takes to maintain a stable funding level, because we're going to basically be eating into that overfunding. And we've looked ahead in years, and they're projecting, or they're having us, required contributions were cut in half almost associated with that. So we're going to look at what would the impacts be holistically, and we anticipate working with MERS this fall when they get some actuarial models to them. But the goal will potentially be to take a chunk of that, move it into the surplus division. We're also, remind the board, we budgeted $150,000 in additional funds to fund that surplus division. So depending on the outcome, by the end of the fiscal year, we could have a larger surplus division balance than we originally projected, specifically with that, due to that hybrid plan. So any questions on the MERS valuation? All right, nobody wants to dig into that, it's exciting.
Charlie, the $100,000 is only the contribution that Lowell and Power put into it, not necessarily any employees contribute.
Yes,
Yes.
everything that I presented is Light and Power aside from the city, and it's employer contributions only. So they group the overall plan funding percentage is the cumulative funding percentage from city and Light and Power, because we're all under one master plan. And then, but yes, no, that's all just our assets that we.
Me as an employee that's contributing, I would hate to think that, oh, they're taking something out of.
No, this is our funds, and they're not being removed from the pension plan.
Into
It's
that
just
bucket.
going to a different bucket within the pension plan.
Yep.
All right. Next is the monthly policy for review, and I thought this one may have some more questions. It's quite a bit more lengthy, but it's our residential security deposit policy. Next month, we will do the commercial deposit, and it sounds like we're gonna have quite a bit of other policy discussions next month, so there's not a whole lot of difference between the commercial and residential, but everybody's had a chance to review that. Are there any questions? I will probably defer to Julie, but wanted to give everybody the opportunity to discuss, and I guess the only comment I'll make is our deposit policy is doing something right if our bad debt write-off continues to do what it's doing. So a lot of that, I think, is attributed to our ability to lien property owners, and that helps as a risk mitigation tool quite a bit. But then we have a good policy, we have a good security deposit policy, and
So, Lowell Township agreed to it, correct?
yes.
At one time, we required deposits, and then, back in, I think it was revised in 2019, I think in 2018, we talked about return, if we can lien the property, why are we
holding deposits?
holding deposits, let's just return them all. And the township got on board, and I guess the question is, has Virgin's Township got on board? Are both townships on board?
I believe so, yes.
That we-
I was gonna say, I think that was all wrapped up before I got here even, so I've not had any involvement with that, but my understanding, I can't remember there was one that was being wrapped up right as Steve was transitioning out and I was
Right.
transitioning in, but I believe that was the last one.
And then the other was, and I haven't read through the whole thing of so, and maybe that's commercial, maybe we're gonna get to that. Cause it had to do with the Atwood, because before we changed our policy, we were requiring them a deposit, and it ended up, by our language, it was like a $30,000 deposit, and it was like, and probably that's in the
In
commercial.
the commercial, and it should be, typically 2 times across the board. I've had, in other places, I've had $400,000 cash deposits.
But we changed that, so if again, I have to go back and read it.
Property owner, if they own the property, they don't have to make a deposit.
Right,
As long as we can lien the property.
right. And if it was being rented or leased, if the property owner agreed to lien the property, then
The tenant wouldn't.
the tenant didn't have to make that. And it was just,
Police.
and it was because it was all sent, it wasn't $100, I mean, it was like, when we were doing the math, it was like $30,000 that they had to,
And there's other mechanisms for large commercial deposits, we can talk about more, but you can get into letters of credit. And those work as good means. A lot of corporations have open lines of credit that banks will earmark. So there are mechanisms, if a large deposit is required, there's risk mitigation mechanisms that we can use to satisfy deposit requirements.
so my question on this, you're just taking things and we're just reviewing them. do you have, you're not bringing this up because you have something that you feel needs to change in this?
No, this was part of the every month, you
Yeah.
know, we wanted to do a review, so every month we're just including the next
Yep.
five policies, our customer policies. So every month we're just going, next month will be 5-4, 5-5.
So there's,
And we'll
there
just
was
roll
not,
through.
there was no flag that said to you,
No.
that said, oh, we need to change.
No, we're just rolling
Yep.
through and trying to make sure that every policy over the course of some time frame is put in front of every board member. You know, it's an opportunity to question outside of an individual circumstance. I always try not to evaluate policies under the microscope of a single incident, kind of like the billing errors policy. We waited till after we had some issues resolved before we brought that back, so we weren't skewed by the circumstances in front of us and kind of can look at it more objectively. So that's just the intention of including a policy every month.
Okay.
But other than that, on the scheduled meetings.
Okay, you got your list of meetings that are up there, and,
And they actually canceled the July 14th MMEA board meeting. We don't have much going on, so took that long.
our next regular board meeting will be August 9th.
And we will continue to meet here, correctly?
Yes.
Right.
Unless the other board members have, I like meeting here.
I do too.
I mean, so we'll just leave it at that. Board comment. Andrew, I'll start with you.
Well, it was interesting to note, like in the beginning when so I was reappointed to this permanent committee. So I've been doing this for like 9 years.
I was curious, and I meant to stop and included that, but yes, you and Tina were reappointed to another 3-year term. So I don't know if that's your second or third.
So with that, and I don't know if you have a copy or if they've done that, so we would ask that you read, and again, we're just trying to do it every time somebody's reappointed, is to sign the board code of conduct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a packet, so I assumed it would happen.
Yeah, one second. Included in the board packet for review.
Actually, is that, it says the 4th term then? They're 3-year terms, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's the beginning of the 4th, yeah.
Oh wow, it's beginning. That's awesome.
So, yeah, I remember it was when my second son was born, or shortly thereafter is when I did running in for council and joined this board.
And didn't know that you were gonna have 4-hour meetings.
Yeah, well, that was kind of weird because last night I'm talking to the kids and, I was like, hey, good night, I might not see it till Wednesday evening, because I'm going to work, this morning, early tomorrow, and so I might not, unless they're still up when I get home,
If Amanda's doing her job, they're in bed, right?
Yeah, she goes to bed before they do.
Okay. They put her to bed? Is that what you're saying? Okay, gotcha. Got the babysitter all tied up.
Yeah, it's a good chance actually, they might be up and she'll be in bed when I get home,
Well, that's a pretty, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's a pretty awesome accomplishment and contribution that you made to the community and to Light Power. So from my seat, I thank you.
Well, thank you, yeah. Well, it's been kind of interesting because, so throughout the meeting, I didn't think about that until I saw that. It's like, oh wow, that's right, it's been that long. So it's been kind of neat to think of some of these things we discussed and where things started from, or at least when I was on the board, what they've evolved into. And but I guess one thing I do want to highlight about that, it's been interesting. Like I remember when I first started, I remember that Julie would be in meetings but generally wouldn't say much, and now it's gotten to the point where it's like she's part of the presentation every time she's here, and she seems to be taking on a lot of responsibility, more so than 9 years ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, yes.
It's impressive to see that kind of development, and I'm just glad that we have staff that's willing and able to do that. You know, and I think the rest of the staff, there's a lot of similarities, like a lot of folks that just keep seeing that. And even the fact that APPA seems to like, they routinely visit our Facebook site just to, because they know there's good stuff there. You know, they found one once and they're gonna go back and so I think even the new employees are taking on, you know, following in that lead. So, you know, thanks for, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of stress sometimes, but, you know, thanks for taking all that on and continuing to develop this. It's, I mean, the staff is really what makes this place so, such a top-notch operation. I mean, I like to think the board has something to do with it, but, you know, we're as much along for the ride, you know, as we are, you know, the steering.
Great.
Well, as Charlie mentioned, I went to the APPA conference, which was in Nashville, the convention center. You could basically fit downtown Lowell under this whole canopy there. Wow. And thank you, Perry, for your blessing for me to go that. Appreciate that. It was a great opportunity to meet members of the APPA from literally around the world. There were representatives from Guam there and Puerto Rico, which are U.S. territories.
And public power.
Yeah. I got to sit in on some these breakfast meetings. They were more interactive type meetings, and I got to sit with other general managers from other municipals. I got to sit with some other board members. You know, one thing that I can take away from that is that we're really fortunate to have Charlie West. By all measures, you know, seeing him held up to all of these different general managers from around the country, around the world. You know, we're pretty darn lucky. He is world class.
Thank you.
Also being able to meet with our general managers from just within Michigan here. It was great networking opportunity to meet all of them, and also again, Charlie standing up next to all these folks. I mean, again, we're really fortunate to have him. Had the opportunity to talk with Steve Donkersloop, who's of course our past general manager, and you know, we talked about his path of general manager here and all the things that he changed, he did, and it sounds like there was a lot for him to do, and he, did a lot. And I think he's partially responsible for making sure we got Charlie here, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was committed to it. He put in a boatload of time to make sure I was successful personally, and that the utility continued to be successful. So he is definitely owed quite a bit of appreciation for what he did.
Again, sitting through the other conferences, just as we were going to the sessions, Charlie and I would check in with each other contemporaneously, and I'd ask him a few questions about, hey, are we doing this and that, you know, and again, he's got it covered. So, you know, we're really fortunate to have him, and thank you for, you know, leading the staff. It's really great to have you. Also coming up for July, for me, I have with Ballasburg Historical Society is the July 30th Saturday Village Celebration. And if you'll notice at the corner of Alden Nash and N21, we have a big sign out there that's advertising it. It's going to be a day of music. We've got 5 different musical artists line up, bands. It's going to be like a big car and equipment show too. We've got all kinds of stuff coming. And our cutoff line was 1962, as that was the last year that the schoolhouse was in operation. So really looking forward to that. For October, we're going to have on October 1st is our new annual dinner. And I'm working with Marty Chambers from Red Barn Antiques on that. So we're hoping to get about 50 people packed into the schoolhouse, I think. Should be a good time. We've got a recipe that we're using from the cookbook that was printed in 1971 for the centennial. And so, yeah, it's going to be a good dinner. There's a post about it on Facebook, but it was written very poetically of what was prepared. And it's cute. Yeah, and we're brewing a root beer, which New Union Brewery is kind of giving us some tips on. So, yeah. And then October 15th is our paranormal investigation throughout the village. Yeah, so it'll be a fun time with 5 different groups rotating throughout the village with the paranormal folks. Yeah. Yeah, that's about all I got.
Okay, with that, before I go to Daniel, Julie. So, throwing you on the spot. So I think at our last board meeting, I believe you were out west someplace.
Yeah.
Representing Lowell Light and Power at a convention, doing a thing. I'd love, and I think the rest of the board members would like to hear a little bit about that.
I was, as you guys know, we just recently upgraded to that new portal. Invoice Cloud is the company that sells it. And I was approached by them before the conference. They were going to be, talking about their product to other MillSoft customers, and they asked me to talk. So, I talked before the conference, not like I wasn't really put on the spot, but it was very nice of them to ask me, a lady that recently switched to Invoice Cloud, the payment portal, and asked about our experience, asked about how it went, different questions that he went through, and we just explained it. It was a very packed house. I didn't think it was going to be that many people. Even the person that I was talking with, he said, "Oh, this is so small, there won't be any people." Throughout the presentation, more people kept coming in and coming in. I'm like, can I hide under the table?
You're a draw.
Not me.
Yes, you were the draw.
But yeah, so it was cool. It was very neat that they asked me, and the presentation went well. We just discussed how well the portal's working and how much Lowell Power customers have utilized it. Really, he had a graph up that it was just great to see our name up there and how much increase we've had in paperless payments on the portal. Just all those things that we're trying to encourage our customers to use. It was pretty neat to see our name up there, and he advertised different companies, and he had our logo up there, so it was great to be a part of. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's great to, for you and for Lowell Light and Power to keep spreading our name out there, and so yeah, thank you for doing that. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, So anyway, why you turn red really easy?
I know.
Daniel.
So it was Lisa's 1 year anniversary?
Yes.
Yeah. Congrats on staying and doing a good job. I also wanted to say the bad debt write-off is not always expected to be that low, but that's great. I was telling Charlie about it. I was like, we write off single customers larger than that in accounting every other week.
Right.
So you're just like, man, it's impressive to see. And so I'm happy to see that, and like the deposit policy being part of that, and the liens and stuff, I think help, and obviously all you guys' work and like reaching out to people is really paying off. And then for Ryan, getting all of the things done that you do, being shorthanded, especially at the moment, always great to see, per usual. Casey always thinking about safety. I did stump Casey the other day with a question at the park.
Wow. Oh, we were talking about energy, yeah.
Yep,
All
I just
right.
wanna say it's possible. And his answer was, I'll ask Tom to get into that.
I can stump myself.
So,
Funny.
yeah, I just wanted to point those out, and that's all I got.
Okay, again, I've talked about it before, and I'm not sure, do all of you, do our board members, all get the Public Power magazine?
Online.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're online as well.
Well, I'm still, I can do both, you know, but
Yeah,
I like having this little thing and,
read while you drive.
and there's a whole thing about cultivating tomorrow's workforce in here, and if you haven't, I think it's a long, what they do is they've highlighted awardees, and each one of them, you know, what does it mean to be in public power leader? What are the benefits of working for a small public power utility? What attributes shine through, or do you try to foster in the public power workplace culture? So I mean, and it goes on, and so it's just a great article to read. And I think what, Craig, what you had mentioned, like the conference area, you certainly learn things there, but I think it also affirms that what we're doing here at Lowell Light and Power is what we should be doing, and it affirms of when you see, and again, Charlie was in his home turf there in Tennessee. You know, remember he's coming from. He hasn't always lived in Tennessee, but he was coming from Tennessee. So you know, people knew him and everything. But yeah, I think a lot of times the conferences we learn things about what's going on. But what I see the biggest benefit, it affirms that what we're doing here at Lowell Light and Power is correct. And I know Charlie and I, we've talked about conferences where it's always been kind of unwritten. We try to share those conferences amongst all of the board members, and we're going to try to put together an unwritten policy of, you know, where we'd love to see everybody attend, you know, local Michigan conferences, and when it comes to the national conferences, we certainly want to spread that wealth around for everybody to go and attend. But you're absolutely right when you come back and it's affirming that what we're doing here at Lowell Light and Power, and I think as a board member go and attending those, it then not that we don't believe everything that Charlie says, but again, we're getting a board member's perspective. So I think that's really good. I was at the Riverwalk helping out this last week, and I don't know if we can do it, whether it meets the variance or anything, but being over on the river, I think it would be really great if we can have a signage on the river side of our building saying that we're Lowell Light and Power, or whether we can do, like, there's part of our building that again is brick, but there's metal, and that the metal inserts, and that was used to get equipment, the big generators and everything in and out of the building. You know, and again, I just sit there and think and going, you know, oh, if we got, you know, billboards now are made of plastic, you know, material, vinyl, and then going, oh, let's get a shot of our lineman and have that up on the building, you know, in that area for a month or something. Again, it would be attractive when you're out on the river to see, born and raised here, yeah, I know where Lowell Light and Power is, but being at the Riverwalk, it's going like, boy, it'd be nice to shine our name across the river.
Absolutely.
So you just said the linemen are attractive?
Well, yeah, well, they are. I mean, look at Ryan. I mean, Ryan. Come on. He's got shorts on. He's got, you know, he models.
Andrew, as long as we don't put a 6-story building up in front.
And it's not necessarily, probably not for here, but when we're sitting in these meetings, I just think about past meetings and everything. And my question is, because we had a customer come in and we determined that it was really a bank issue. Do we still have that bank issue?
We do, we had a concern this week about it.
Okay.
We
So
are still
we're-
having the same trouble. We are still reaching out to that bank. People at that bank don't know that they do that. We try to ask them to ask higher up people to mention other customers having trouble.
And so is it the same, is it other customers or is it the same customer?
Other customers, same thing.
Right. So again, I would encourage our staff to even reach out to the customer that came in. I know, I'm sure you know.
Yeah, I know.
Who. And just, you know, I think it's being proactive, I think is, and I think our staff is proactive. That's why we have the minuscule write-offs, is because we are proactive, and again, we just want to continue that. Yeah, other than that, I think everything's going good. Again, a lot of vacations, and short vacations, but vacations coming up, and so with that, is there anything else? Yep.
Sorry, you go ahead, when we were done, I forgot, I got a
Okay.
couple notes that I didn't get to on my list.
Okay.
I think today's my 1-year anniversary.
Is it? Congratulations.
It is, yes, you've been on the board for 1 year, because you're officially appointed,
For July.
July was
Yeah.
your, yeah, you took a new,
Yeah.
yeah, you took over a new term.
This is
Congratulations.
Your term.
That's how they all are.
Time flies, yeah.
Couple things that I just wanted to mention, from a staffing standpoint, we did bring on a temporary worker to help this summer, so just want to make the board aware of that. We are short-staffed right now. We do have a current vacancy for a ground worker position that we'll be looking to fill in the coming weeks. Ryan's leading the charge on that, but wanted to make the board aware of that. And then August 13th, out at Fowlsburg State Park, we will be having a company picnic.
County Park.
County Park. That's what I meant.
I
I
just
wrote
want to,
state. No, I don't know why I said yes.
State Park?
I like that.
It's in Michigan.
It is Fowlsburg in the state of Michigan Park. No, we're gonna have a company picnic. It's a Saturday. More details will be to come, but you know, just an opportunity to get everybody together on the weekend, do a family-friendly type of event. It'll be a good time.
Well, and I'll be happy to open up the village to anybody that wants to take tours through.
Be fun.
Yeah.
So,
But those were, I knew I'd forget. I always get through the board comment, look back at my notes and go, oh yeah, 2 more things.
and Fowlsburg, I was involved in a memorial float eulogy thing, and then we had a hot dog cookout at Fowlsburg, and it was wonderful. The weather was beautiful, and the staff at Fowlsburg Park just go above and beyond to make we reserved an area, and they had tables set up, and they think about not just that, but they think about, oh, you're gonna be here at 2 o'clock? Which side of the tree? Okay, we'll put it on this side. So we're in the shade. I mean, it just was a wonderful, we're fortunate, the Lowell community, to have a facility like that out in with the county. I felt it's great. And the water's, I mean, kids can play, you know, it's play in the stream and everything else, so. Okay, with that, I would entertain, anything else? Casey, you got anything?
Nothing.
Okay.
It's dumb, it's dumb.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion?
Supported?
It's moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
8:25, 8:25.
I got one thing I was